Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season, going in depth through each wide receiver and explaining why I have them ranked at each and every single spot inside of the top 40. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. And if you would like access to my PPR rankings and cheat sheet, they're available in the link in the video description in my Patreon. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin in the S tier at the wide receiver position with my wide receivers 1, 2, and 3. All three of these wide receivers feel incredibly safe this season, like wrapping some bubble wrap around your team, like wrapping a condom around your team. Now, my wide receiver number 1 is not accustomed to using those Trojans, those rubbers, because Tyreek Hill has like 11 kids at this point, but he does feel like a very safe pick. Now, he's currently dealing with a minor injury, but based upon all reports, it is really nothing to worry about. Last season, Tyreek Hill was the wide receiver 2 in PPR, marking back-to-back seasons as the wide receiver number 2 in Miami, back-to-back years with 1,700 plus receiving yards. We know the Dolphins are going to be a top-tier offense yet again, and we know their MO is feeding the ball to Tyreek Hill, so I have supreme confidence in him as my wide receiver 1. At number 2, we got CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, CeeDee Lamb isn't dealing with an injury, but he's dealing with that contract dispute between him and Jerry Jones. They're going rock'em sock'em robot style, but at the end of the day, I think everything gets ironed out, and CeeDee Lamb puts up yet another beautiful chef's kiss Manufuik season like last year. Towards the end of last season, CeeDee Lamb was bending defenses over game in and game out, and I think he could do that yet again in 2024. As we get closer and closer to the start of the season, I'm starting to panic a little bit on the contract dispute, but as we are speaking right now, I am not overwhelmingly worried. I think that CeeDee Lamb has the shot to be the wide receiver 1, and I think that he is a very safe pick to finish inside of the top 3 at the wide receiver position. Closing out the S tier, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. This dude got over 1,500 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns, playing with a torn oblique for a majority of the season. He had 119 receptions, over 160 targets, over 1,500 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. This dude has been uber consistent ever since entering the National Football League in 2021, and I think he could potentially outperform his wide receiver 3 finish last year. We know the Detroit Lions heavily rely on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Doesn't matter if it's first down, second down, third down. Doesn't matter if it's in the red zone or on their own 1-yard line. Amon-Ra St. Brown has the skills to pay the bills, and I believe he deserves to be an S-tier wide receiver. Moving now to the A tier, we have my wide receivers 4 and 5. At number 4, I got Justin Jefferson. At number 5, I got Jamar Chase. Justin Jefferson, despite the quarterback situation being far from ideal, is still one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the National Football League. He put up big numbers last season when Kirk Cousins went down. Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, is quarterback proof, and I don't want you guys overthinking him because Sam Darnold is under center. The Kevin O'Connell system will be able to get production out of Justin Jefferson, whether the quarterback was Patrick Mahomes or mono man Sam Darnold. At number 5, we got another contract dispute, and that is Jamar Chase, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals. He has not been practicing. Now, he actually has 2 years left on his deal, but he wants that big fat contract. Will he get it? Will he not get it? Will he end up just not holding out? These are all question marks. Ultimately, I think something gets resolved, and he's there week 1 for the Bengals. This guy's one of the best receivers in the NFL as well. If you have him ranked outside the top 5, you're probably smoking crack, making your rankings. But obviously, the fact that there is this contract dispute notion does make me at least a tad bit worried. But as of right now, he is a clear top 5 wide receiver in 2024. Moving now into the B tier, we got wide receivers 6 through 9. At number 6, we got Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, Garrett Wilson's whole entire career was terrorized by the quarterback position in New York last season. Trevor Siemian, as well as Zach Moss, were absolutely nosediving Garrett Wilson's value. But now, with a seemingly healthy Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson is in position to put the defenses in a sleeper hold game in and game out. This dude was absolutely raw dogging the Giants defense in training camp a couple of days ago. Now, I understand the Giants don't have the best defense in the NFL, but I am very confident that even if Aaron Rodgers is just 70 or 75% of his old self, that is 9 gazillion times better than the quarterback play Garrett Wilson has had his whole entire career. We have seen it on tape. Garrett Wilson has all of the skills. We just need the quarterback to actually do something so Garrett Wilson can score more than 3 touchdowns that he scored last season. The dude had 168 targets last year in his rookie year. He had 147. So this is a guy that is going to be very involved in this Robert Saleh offense with the Jets. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to elevate Garrett Wilson to superstardom. At number 7, we got A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles, who has been back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97, a top five wide receiver in fantasy football, wide receiver 4 in 2023, wide receiver 5 in 2022, and he could easily replicate that this season. I have him ranked as the wide receiver 7, but when you're ranked this high, you obviously have that upside of being the wide receiver number 1 in fantasy football, as well as being a top 5 guy. The Philadelphia Eagles bring in Kellen Moore to be their offensive coordinator, which could lead to a more pass-heavy attack on offense. A.J. Brown is clearly the best red zone weapon, the best touchdown threat, wide receiver, and weapon as a whole on this team, unless you're on the 1-yard line, because then Jalen Hurts is the ultimate weapon, fucking tactical nuke, 25 kill streak. A.J. Brown is in a great situation to succeed again. 1,400 yards in back-to-back seasons, has 10-plus touchdown upside. No-brainer to rank him inside of the top 8. At number 8, we got Puka Nacua of the LA Rams. Now, Puka is still dealing with that knee injury, but he is expected to play in week number 1. He was the wide receiver 5 last season in his rookie year. Sean McVay is an absolute genius, Albert Einstein style. This is a dude that is going to scheme up everything possible to get Puka and Cooper Kupp open. Matthew Stafford, I get he is not in the quote-unquote prime of his career. He is a little bit old. He's reaching unk status. But at the end of the day, Matthew Stafford is a very competent quarterback that is going to feed the rock to Puka Nacua. I know everyone's glazing Cooper Kupp, and I'm giving him the Sukalamink special as well. But Puka Nacua is still the wide receiver 1A in the Rams offense. And I love Puka Nacua's skill set. I love his ability to separate. And while he only scored 6 touchdowns last year, I get he doesn't have the build of fucking Megatron or something, but I think he could score more than 6 touchdowns this year. At number 9, to close out the B tier, we got Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. has yet to play a snap in the National Football League in a regular season game, and it frankly doesn't matter because he is still going to be a top 10 wide receiver in my rankings. I believe that the Arizona Cardinals offense is going to look miles and miles ahead better compared to what we saw last season. Obviously, some dodgy quarterback play. Kyler Murray comes back from the torn ACL, the torn meniscus, and doesn't necessarily look like his old self, but now another year removed from that. Marvin Harrison being the clear, undisputed wide receiver 1 in this offense. If you watch his tape in college, it's going to make you pop a chub downstairs. So Marvin Harrison Jr., the clear alpha number 1 wide receiver in a Kyler Murray offense. I love Marvin Harrison Jr., and there's going to be people that are nervous to draft him because he's a rookie and you got to get him in the 2nd round. Don't be scared. Don't be fearful. Draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Moving to the C tier, we got a whole lot of wide receivers in this range, wide receivers 10 through 19. At number 10, we got Drizzy Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Drake London was a guy that I bought into last year, and ultimately the quarterback play held him down, just like we discussed with Garrett Wilson. The play calling by Arthur Smith was as suspect as it gets, but this season with Cole's Cash, Kirk Cousins, as well as a brand new offensive coordinator, brand new head coach, I think Drake London London is now finally in a situation where he is going to be able to show off his skills. He only had 110 targets last year, 905 yards, and just 2 touchdowns. It feels like Kirk Cousins normally is able to feed a wide receiver 1 in his offense, have a very fantasy relevant wide receiver 1 dating all the way back to his years in Washington with the R words, the Redskins back in the day. So I really do believe that Drizzy Drake London has all of the skills. The quarterbacks have been weighing him down. The coaching has been weighing him down. And now that he's going in the late second round, sometimes in the third round, it feels a lot easier to select him. At number 11, we have DJ Moore. Now, I have DJ Moore ranked significantly higher than a majority of fantasy football analysts because I think a majority of fantasy football analysts are scared, and they are capital scared, all capital letters, because they are nervous about Keenan Allen, they're nervous about Rome Odunze, and they're going to shake in their boots with the ranking of DJ Moore. This guy was the wide receiver 8 last year with Tyson Bagent and Justin Fields under center. Now he gets a generational quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams, and just because the other wide receivers are there, people are scared, they're afraid, they're petrified. But I think DJ Moore can do even better than his amazing numbers in 2023. He gets away from the Carolina Panthers and magically he turns his career around. They gave him a fat check this offseason, a humongous contract, and I think DJ Moore is going to live up to that contract. He's the clear number 1 wide receiver in this offense, the clear number 1 target, and if Caleb Williams locks onto him like I believe he will, DJ Moore could legitimately be the wide receiver number 1. At number 12, we got Nico Collins, a guy that people are also nervous about. Why is that? Because of the wide receiver position around him, right? Everyone is very confident in CJ Stroud. They saw CJ Stroud pants defenses all of his rookie season, but now because they add in Stephon Diggs, the crybaby wide receiver, they are ready to panic on Nico Collins. Now, I understand he was just the wide receiver 18 last season, and I have him ranked ahead of that, but that's because he only played in 15 games. In terms of efficiency, his efficiency numbers jump off the pages. He is incredibly efficient. He is the clear number 1 wide receiver. You look at training camp, you look at preseason, he's always in there with the ones. Nico Collins is going to surprise a lot of people that are ready to panic, that are ready to back out, run away from Nico Collins just because of the addition of Stephon Diggs. At number 13, we got Davante Adams. Now, Davante Adams is a guy of the Las Vegas Raiders that I have talked about all offseason as being a clear avoid for me. And based upon my ranking of Nico Collins, DJ Moore, Drake London, above Davante Adams, I am probably never going to end up drafting him. Now, it's not because I think Davante Adams now getting a little bit older, he's completely washed. I think it is far from that, but the situation in Las Vegas is just not ideal at all. This is a team that's identity is run the shit out of the football, and their head coach wants to do that. Their starting quarterback is Gardner Minshew. I know, Nick, Gardner Minshew elevated Michael Pittman Jr. last season, and maybe if the Raiders try to throw the ball a little bit more, that'll happen, but I don't suspect Davante Adams to have that crazy touchdown upside that we are used to in the past, where he's just, with his eyes closed, ripping off 10 plus touchdowns, just because the Raiders offense is relatively limp dick. I believe in the talent of Davante Adams. If for some reason he gets traded halfway throughout the season to another team, then maybe we could rejoice and love Davante Adams again. I don't think he's going to be a straight up bust. Like, if you draft him, you're not going to be completely disappointed, but I don't really see him having that huge season because of the quarterback position and the team as a whole weighing him down. At number 14, we got Mike Evans, Magic Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This dude has gotten over 1,000 yards in every single season of his career. He's done it with Jameis Winston. He's done it with the GOAT, Tampa Bay Tom Brady, and he's done it with Baker Mayfield. I understand there was an offensive coordinator change, but no offensive coordinator is going to write off Mike Evans, Geno Smith style, right? They're not going to write him out of the script. Mike Evans is the clear alpha wide receiver on this team. His build shows that he could score 10 plus touchdowns. This dude has scored 12 or more touchdowns in half of his seasons in the NFL. He is a certified Hall of Fame jacket, guaranteed wide receiver, and we continue to get to watch him. Last year, I liked him at ADP. This year, he's going a little bit higher, and I'm ready to draft him yet again. I feel like he's a very safe pick while also having huge upside game in and game out. Next up, we move to Jalen Waddle away, Waddle, till the very next day of the Miami Dolphins. Now, anyone that drafted Jalen Waddle last season felt like they got shafted, felt as though they got a wedgie of the craziest magnitude, a wedgie the level of one that you'd see in like an old school movie where they take the flag down and they attach someone's underwear to the pulley thing and they lift them up all the way up the flagpole like the Minutemen movie with the guy from Good Luck Charlie. If anyone's around my age, maybe you know what I'm talking about, a Disney Channel original movie. But Jalen Waddle was the wide receiver 29 last year, and it wasn't very fun. We didn't get to see a lot of the Waddle touchdown celebrations because the motherfucker only scored 4 touchdowns. But at the end of the day, Jalen Waddle on a majority of teams would be the clear number 1 wide receiver. Why isn't he that in Miami? Because Tyreek Hill, this insane wide receiver, is the wide receiver number 1. The guy has speed. We know speed kills. Jalen Waddle, second season bounce back here, right? And now it's not really a second season, it's his 4th season, but you get what I mean, right? Last year, down season, doesn't get the touchdowns, doesn't get all the targets that we're used to. I think he bounces back in a big way. I'm ecstatic about this Dolphins offense this season. And based upon what I saw last season, I didn't really see anything that would tell me, oh, Jalen Waddle, 4th season, the guy fucking reeks right now. He's just magically trash. So Jalen Waddle, I feel pretty confident in my ranking in him. Next up, we got Cooper Kupp, the type of wide receiver that you want to take your daughter on a date of the Los Angeles Rams. Now, we talked about it with Cooper Kupp, with Puka Nacua, I mean, how everyone is just fondling the Johnson of Cooper Kupp. He looks like his old self. He looks great, this, that, and the other thing. Well, guess what? I've been in on Cooper Kupp even before that, even before the beat reporters were beating Cooper Kupp off double-handed, right? Cooper Kupp is an amazing wide receiver. I understand that he wasn't great last year, but he came into the season hurt. Kind of knew that was kind of going to be a death stamp on his season. Now, he still had a bunch of huge games, but as a whole, he was the wide receiver number 39. Cooper Kupp now fully healthy, another year removed from the injury. I feel incredibly confident in Cooper Kupp. Again, I believe so heavily in Sean McVay. I believe heavily in Matthew Stafford. So I'm going to keep on drafting Cooper Kupp in the 3rd, sometimes even in the 4th round. I think that both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp can coexist as top 20 wide receivers, both inside of my top 16. Next up, we move to Brandon Ayuk. Now, the news around Brandon Ayuk feels like you are getting just thrown around. It's like if you have ever gotten stuck in the washing machine like you're my stepsister, right? What are you doing, step bro? Shout out Mia Malkova. But Brandon Ayuk, it feels like we're getting tossed left and fucking right. Ragdoll style like you're playing Saints Row. Brandon Ayuk, one day, he's a 49er. The next day, he's getting traded to fucking play in the CFL with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, right? It's so fucking confusing. One day, he's a Steeler. The next day, he's a 49er. I don't know what to tell you. Right now, my general feeling is that when I rub the crystal ball, I see him being a 49er. I see him signing the contract. Sign the contract, big boy. But ultimately, that is far from a guarantee, and it has made this fantasy football offseason incredibly tough because I never really know where to rank him. I'm giving him a fair ranking here as the wide receiver 17 because I feel like he would fall in my rankings if he moved to the Pittsburgh Steelers. If he stayed as a 49er, he'd move up, but there's also a chance that he just holds out and nothing ends up happening, and then you end up getting absolutely reamed on this pick. Brandon Ayuk, when healthy, is amazing. He's the number 1 target on this 49ers offense outside of Christian McCaffrey. He put up 1,300 receiving yards on just 100 targets. I feel like there's going to be a boost in targets this season. 7 touchdowns, 12th in terms of finish. We talked about Nico Collins' efficiency. Brandon Ayuk is another one of these guys that is an efficiency monster. I feel like the best is yet to come for Brandon Ayuk, but the problem with me not ranking him, because I had him in the top 12 earlier on the season, the reason why I'm not going to rank him there right now is because of this contract situation. Hopefully, this all, he puts his John Hancock to paper soon. But as of right now, again, I can't say with 100% confidence that Ayuk will be either a Steeler, a 49er, maybe he gets traded to some other fucking team that we don't even know about it. Number 18, we got Rashee Rice. Now, Rashee Rice is climbing quicker than Rocky running up those stairs in front of his statue. Rashee Rice keeps moving up ADP, and he keeps moving up my rankings. I understand they have Hollywood Brown now, who's hurt, but he should be back at least a couple weeks in the season. They draft Xavier Worthy, who I like, very speedy wide receiver. Speaking of speedy, Rashee Rice, off the field, guy drives fast as fuck. The thing is, though, how the NFL legal system works is they wait for the legal system to play out. His court date is in December, so it's very unlikely that Rashee Rice gets suspended this season, which was suppressing his ADP, suppressing his value. The thoughts of maybe a 3 or 4 game suspension, and honestly, I think that gets pushed until next season. Rashee Rice was the wide receiver 21 in his rookie year, but we saw as the season went along, Patrick Mahomes and him develop that peanut butter and jelly level connection. It was amazing. Pippen and Michael Jordan level connection. Rashee Rice is the number 1 receiver here. Kelsey's another year older. I still like Kelsey, but I think that Rashee Rice, the best has been yet to be seen, right? I've got him ranked as the wide receiver 18. He was the wide receiver 21 last season. And again, with how heavily they fed him in the playoffs towards the end of last season, if you're Patrick Mahomes, is Kermit the Frog's number 1 wide receiver, I'm going to fucking draft you. At number 19, we got Chris Olave. Now, I moved Chris Olave up a couple of weeks ago, and then I decided, you know what? I can't do it. While I think Chris Olave has all the talent, has all of the skill to be a reliable top 10 option in fantasy football, Derek Carr just absolutely sinks the battleship of Chris Olave. Derek Carr sucks to a very large degree. Now, maybe another off season with Olave, maybe they get a better connection. But this really feels like a guy that has the most amount of yards in his career, right? Last year he gets 1,100. His rookie year, 1,042, right? So this year rips off 1,250, 13,000, or 13,000. That'd be insane. 1,300. But he scores like 5 or 6 touchdowns like he did last season. And you don't end up being like, oh, I'm so pissed I drafted Olave. But if you have to draft him at the end of the second round, you probably won't end up being very happy with that selection. If magically you throw another quarterback, like if Kirk Cousins went to the Saints, I would be sitting here just literally oogling and ogling all over Chris Olave. Pause. But with Derek Carr there, I don't think you can rank him much higher. Moving now to the D tier, we got wide receivers 20 through 25. And a lot of people will be like, Nick, it's a little bit crazy to have Deebo Samuel in the D tier. Now, if Brandon Ayuk gets traded, Deebo Samuel's going not even to the C tier. He might move all the way up straight to the fucking B tier, because without Brandon Ayuk's target competition, Deebo Samuel is heading straight to the moon. The problem is, if Brandon Ayuk is back, Deebo Samuel is not only not the number 1 target anymore, but he's lost a lot of that rushing upside that really helped Deebo Samuel finish as a top 3 wide receiver in 2021. Now, he's still going to get the rushing attempts, but just not as many, because this guy, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Christian McCaffrey is now there, which really hurts Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is still one of the most fun players to watch in the NFL. 12 touchdowns last season, but he's so heavily dependent on the touchdowns. 800 yards last year, close to 900, 600 the years prior, and then that huge year he had 1,400. Again, I'm not trying to count Deebo out and shit all over the guy's chest and say he's garbage, toss him in the trash, but frankly, if Ayuk is there, like, you just need the touchdowns. And if the touchdowns don't come, you're going to be very, very, very disappointed. At number 21, we got Malik Neighbors. Now, Malik Neighbors is the biggest YOLO, as if you can say that in 2024. Like, that's like a 2012 thing. YOLO, that's the motto. Shout out Drake. But Malik Neighbors, the upside is insane. The upside is off the chain. The upside is top 12 wide receiver in his rookie year. The downside is Malik Neighbors stabs your team in the back. Malik Neighbors cuts you up O.J. Simpson style. Now, I think more than likely, even with Daniel Jones being a certified fucking bum, with the amount of targets, the sheer amount of targets Malik Neighbors gets, with the amount that Malik Neighbors is able to get open, his separation skills, he's going to be fine. But we've seen the cautionary tales before. Chris Olave with Derek Carr, Drake London with Desmond Ridder, right? It sometimes doesn't work, but it sometimes does work. So there's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of upside. So I can't really go hog wild and rank him too much higher than his ADP, but I also can't bury him in my rankings because I acknowledge, shout out Roman Reigns, the upside. At number 22, we got Michael Pittman Jr. Now, I'm low on Michael Pittman Jr. compared to consensus. I love Michael Pittman Jr., for one. Love the player. I was high on him last season. He paid dividends, wide receiver 13, based upon where he was going. You were laughing straight to the bank. But this season, going a lot higher, typically in the third round, even sometimes in the middle of the third round. It just feels like too pretty of a penny for me. Why is that? Because while I love Anthony Richardson for his rushing upside and because he has that cannon attached to his arm to hit him deep down the field, Richardson's going to make some pretty stupid decisions. He's going to turn the ball over in bad scenarios, and frankly, his accuracy is as questionable as it gets. Again, I really like Richardson for fantasy because of the rushing upside, and he has some solid weapons around him. But now Michael Pittman has not just Josh Downs, but a Donnie Mitchell around him. So I think Michael Pittman Jr. just isn't going to live up to his ADP. He's still a very talented player, and I can see him being a top 12 wide receiver due to how good he is. But he only scored 4 touchdowns last year. He was a target merchant, 156 targets. If he gets that many targets again this season, sure, he could beat out this ADP. But for me, in the third round, I'm kind of out. But I still like the guy. So, Michael Pittman Jr., for watching this, I still love you. And I'd love if you'd send me a signed jersey so I can hang it up behind me. At number 23, we got Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper. Wide receiver 16 last year. A bit of a disappointment at ADP, but he was still getting over 110 targets. His sophomore season in 2022, he had 136. So, in the Kellen Moore system, if he's able to get the 136, 140 plus targets, or if A.J. Brown was to get hurt, then Devontae Smith would be going through the moon for me. But as of right now, I feel pretty good as ranking him as a guy that you take as a low-end wide receiver too, that has that big game upside any given week. I love Devontae Smith's skill set. Frankly, if you take A.J. Brown out of there, you throw John Dotson in as the wide receiver too, then I like Devontae Smith a lot more based upon the situation. I don't mind this ranking. I don't think anyone should really mind this ranking. All of these guys that are ranked inside of the S, A, B, C, D tier, while I might have some guys ranked lower than consensus, these are all guys that are going to be fine on your team. It's just my ranking might differentiate significantly from others. Like DJ Moore, I have ranked 8 spots ahead compared to expert consensus. At number 24, shout out Kobe, we got DK Metcalf. Now, DK Metcalf feels like a lock to be a top 24 wide receiver, but with how Geno Smith looked last year, I'm not necessarily ready to buy back into Geno Smith. Now, I'm not going to write him off, but I'm not going to sit here and just glaze all over him doing tricks on it. I think DK Metcalf would be a top 24 wide receiver if I was throwing him the ball. I feel pretty confident that he's going to do that, but I can't really push him up my rankings much higher due to the fact that JSN now in his second year, I think JSN's going to be a lot more involved. Tyler Lockett is still just going to be there catching a bunch of passes. It seems like they want to try to run the ball a lot with Kenneth Walker. So I think DK Metcalf will finish anywhere from like wide receiver 18 to 24, which I would be fine with based upon where he is coming off the board. To close out the D tier, we got T. Higgins, Titty Boy T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, we talked about a fall off for Jalen Waddle. T. Higgins fell off even harder. It was hard to watch. 12 games played, 76 targets, 42 receptions, 656 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. He had back-to-back seasons with over 105 targets, over 1,000 yards, and 6 or more touchdowns. Now, last season, his season could be excused, right? The Bengals come out the gate, awful, straight up cheeks. Then Joe Burrow gets healthy. They're rocking, they're rolling. Then Joe Burrow gets hurt. And then they have another quarterback go in there whose name is escaping me, but his girlfriend was smoking hot, if anyone remembers watching that game. Sheesh, very nice for that guy, that quarterback. But now Burrow fully healthy. the Chase contract dispute. Now, if Chase is like holding out, I'm going to move Higgins up even more. I think Higgins is another one of these guys where it's like, okay, if you just put him on a different team, he's the clear #1 wide receiver. The numbers here in Cincinnati should be very high. I think that without Joe Mixon, they might look to even throw the ball at a much higher clip. So T feels like a guy that I need to be ranking inside of the D tier. He feels like a guy that a lot of people are a little bit too low on. Next up, we move to the E tier, and this is a tier that I really like. These are the guys that if you are in a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex league, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex leagues, if these guys are your 3rd wide receiver and flex, or your 2 flexes, I would be ecstatic to have them. Outside of Diggs, so I'm a little bit more nervous about. Tank Dell, I have him ranked ahead of Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs did not look good at all towards the end of last season. Now, maybe a change of scenery is needed for Stephon Diggs. And while Tank Dell's usage so far in preseason hasn't been amazing, I don't think he needs the most usage to do the most. Now, maybe that makes him not very consistent, but everything we've heard out of CJ Stroud this offseason is basically just loving all on Tank Dell. So I'm going to be honest, I think this season things finish if all stay healthy. Nico Collins, #1 in targets. #2, Tank Dell. #3, Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell was amazing in his rookie year when healthy. The situation definitely got a lot more cloudy, though, for him compared to Nico Collins, so I can't boost him up too much, but I do have him ahead of expert consensus. 27, Stephon Diggs. He was still a top 10 wide receiver last year, but if you had him, you literally didn't want to start him for like the last half of the season. It was hard for me to make videos and be like, hey guys, you should sit Stephon Diggs. But towards the end of the season, I was so tired of getting face fucked metaphorically by Stephon Diggs that I had to start telling you guys to sit him. Stephon Diggs was, before last season, you'd be talking about how this guy could be the #1 receiver in fantasy football. And even entering into last season, what I saw in the second half, though, tells me maybe there's a fall off imminent here. Again, I'm not going to bury him too hard in my rankings because I still think he's skilled. I still think he's a great receiver. And if he ends up, like some people think he'll be the #1 target. Like if he ends up as the #1 target, I am so wrong on Stephon Diggs, but I just don't really see that being the case. At 28, we got Amari Cooper. Now, Deshaun Watson really scares me. Like I think Deshaun Watson, now that he can't get any massages, he's just too tense. He can't do anything. And he has been pretty shit as a whole, as a Cleveland Brown quarterback. Now, obviously, maybe things change this year. He could get better. I'm not here to completely kind of dunk all over Deshaun Watson like Mia Khalifa did in that one video. That's how you know that guy's a real fucking sicko. When I saw the video of Deshaun Watson getting dunked on by Mia Khalifa. If you don't believe me, that's a real video, by the way. You can look it up. But Amari Cooper played great with cool Joe Flacco last year. One of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. So with Joe Flacco playing, not the best. Like, again, he looked good. Joe Flacco isn't amazing at his old age. He was a top 17 receiver last year. So maybe I'm being disrespectful ranking him as a wide receiver 28. He feels fine. But again, this is like you're getting him as your wide receiver 3 or your flex. You're ecstatic about that. At number 29, we got George Pickens. Now, George Pickens is another guy that's stuck in limbo. I could almost see myself ranking him inside of the prior tier, the D tier, if we knew Ayuk wasn't coming there. But with that being all in limbo right now, George Pickens feels good as the wide receiver number 29. Top 22 wide receiver last year, despite the quarterback play being as egregious as it gets. I get Russell Wilson, Justin Fields are no messiah for the quarterback position in Pittsburgh, but I do think that those guys are levels ahead of the quarterback play Pickens has seen throughout his career. He didn't even get ancient Big Ben. He's been playing with garbage, Kenny Pickett. Moving now to my wide receiver, numero 30. Number 30 overall, we got Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Christian Kirk, another one of those kind of underrated type of wide receivers. Now, with how much hype has been coming onto Brian Thomas Jr., with how Brian Thomas Jr. has looked, how the coaches have been talking him up, I'm starting to panic a little bit on Christian Kirk. Now, Christian Kirk is a guy that was kind of early on in the preseason process, not on the field all the time. There's one thought, hey, maybe they're just cautious because he's a veteran, or maybe they don't like him as much as we want to like him. They're not going to use him as much. but I see no way in 2 wide receiver sets that Christian Kirk isn't in there as the 1 in terms of targets, and then Brian Thomas Jr. is number 2. Like, I would be hard-pressed to see Gabe Davis or some other scrub out there with Brian Thomas Jr. But again, there's reasons to worry. He's not practicing with the calf injury. Again, don't jump overboard with Christian Kirk. Don't panic too much yet. But I did drop him down my ranking slightly. At 31, we got Zay Flowers. Now, I'm a huge fan of Zay Flowers. Rookie year does a lot. He starts to really catch that fire, Katniss Everdeen style towards the end of last season, very similar to Rashee Rice, both rookie wide receivers. Zay Flowers has a huge game in the AFC Championship, fumbles the ball away. They lose the game partially because of it. Now, again, you can't blame just one play on the whole game, unless it's like a double doink, then you can. But Zay Flowers, a lot of people are giving him the short end of the stick because of that. Now, the Ravens don't pass the ball at a very high rate, but the only competition around him is really Mark Andrews and Rashad Master Bateman, and Rashad Bateman has never paid off once in his career. So Flowers feels pretty comfortable here as a high upside pick weekly, but I think the consistency might be far and few in between. At 32, if you want more consistency, you can go with Chris Godwin. Now, Chris Godwin last year wasn't very good. Now, he still put up over 1,000 yards, 83 receptions, but he only had 3 touchdowns, and they didn't use him as the slot wide receiver. They actually used him under 35% of the time in the slot last season, when the prior 3 years, when you exclude last season, they used him around 70% of the time in the slot. So it didn't really make sense for them to move, like Canales, to move Chris Godwin out of his sweet spot, right? It's not like you would magically take Tom Brady and switch him from quarterback to running back, right? It's like, it doesn't make sense. I get, Nick, he's still a wide receiver out there, you fucking idiot. It's not like they fully changed his position. But if a wide receiver is dominant as the slot, it's not like you put Julian Edelman out there to be Randy Moss, right? You put him out there to be Julian Edelman. You don't put Chris Godwin out there in these different situations. You put him there as the fucking slot. I think with the team talking up using him in the slot more, Chris Godwin feels like a very cozy selection. At numero 33, we got Jaden Riley Reed of the Green Bay Packers. Jaden Reed is one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. In his rookie year, he showed off, despite the fact that everyone was all over Christian Watson, me included. Jaden Reed was really the guy that you wanted. 10 total touchdowns last year in his rookie campaign. It seems like Jordan Love has a favorite wide receiver, and his name is Jaden Reed. Now, the only problem as to why I can't rank Jaden Reed higher is because I see this team cycling in a bunch of wide receivers game in and game out, because they're basically 4 or 5 wide receivers deep. They got Dobbs, they've got Reed, they've got not Deshaun Watson, they've got Christian Watson, they've got Bo Melton and Dontavian Wicks. So maybe not as much consistency, but if Jaden Reed does become the number 1 wide receiver, then I think you get him as a steal at ADP of pick 81. 34, Terry McLaurin. They get rid of Jahan Dotson, but we've fallen into this trap every single year with Terry McLaurin, and that is that, hey, the new quarterback's going to make him better. His best finish in his career was the wide receiver 22. Or as the wide receiver 19, actually, in 2022. But that's kind of inflated because he played in 17 games that year. Now, Terry McLaurin's printed off 1,000+ yards in 4 straight seasons. His first year, his rookie year, he had 919. He's never been a huge touchdown guy, but maybe Jaden Daniels fixes this all, right? But every year we kind of buy into the same narrative, and eventually you kind of want to flick that away, right? Just whisk it away. Again, I'm not out on Terry McLaurin. I'm far from out. I like him, and I've taken him multiple times. In this tier of wide receiver, you will see me, hey, when Christian Kirk, Flowers, Godwin, Reed, McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Ridley, when they're all going in the same range, I'm just going to pick, if I'm taking 2 of them, I'm just closing my eyes and picking them. Because again, they all are players that I like a ton. It's just I don't like Terry McLaurin as much as I like those other guys. At 35, we got Deontay Johnson. Now, I have been a Deontay Johnson stan since birth. I've been a Deontay Johnson guy for life. I have been banging the drum for this dude for years. Last year, straight up dud. But just like with George Pickens, you can just blame that on the quarterback situation. Blame it all on the quarterback. But now you say, Nick, he is now in Carolina with Bryce Young. Bryce Young was not young Moolah, baby. He was not very good. So how is that going to change? Now, a lot of talk out of camp. Dave Canales talking about how great Bryce Young looks. The beat reporters beating the dude off. So Deontay Johnson, I think, is in good hands here. Bryce Young had Adam Thielen looking like, I don't even know, like the best fucking receiver you've ever seen in your life for the first couple weeks of the season until that eventually fell off. But if Deontay Johnson is in that scenario, people don't know how great. They seem to forget how great Deontay Johnson was in 2021 with competent quarterback play out of Big Ben Roethlisberger. So I am going, even though Big Ben wasn't that great this year, but he was better than what Deontay Johnson has had. I think that he's a very safe bet to finish inside of the top 35. And honestly, I could see him being like a top 18 guy, if I'm being completely honest. I've just always been a fan of Deontay Johnson. And he's also kind of shed the dropsies that he used to have, a strong case of the Butterfingers. At number 36 to close out the E tier before we get into the F tier is Calvin Ridley of the Titans. DeAndre Hopkins might be back week 1. He might not be. He might force himself to come back, which I think could end up biting him in the butt and potentially making him injured again. Calvin Ridley was a guy that I was all over last season. I was talking up Calvin Ridley left and right. I saw the clips and the shorts. The preseason, he was looking great. But then during the regular season, he was dropping everything. Everything. I mean, you could have handed the fucking ball to Calvin Ridley and he would have dropped it. But still, he had over 1,000 yards. He had 8 touchdowns, the quietest 1,000-yard, 8-touchdown season ever, because everyone doesn't want to draft him anymore if they drafted him last season. Now, I'm not going to tell you to do the Men in Black move where you put the pen thingy up to your face and it erases your memory. I'm not trying to do that. Memory erasiosis, or whatever they say in Wizards of Waverly Place. But what I'll tell you is now he's coming off at a much bigger discount. He's no longer a second or third round pick. He goes much later. Will Levis, the Mayo Man, like, kind of feels like he has some upside, at least in my opinion. Could be the franchise guy for the Titans. Calvin Ridley now being the wide receiver 1 in an offense that's going to go from being just this run-heavy, Derrick Henry train-fed offense to a pass-heavy attack makes me believe in Calvin Ridley. Again, he was the wide receiver 24 last year, doing a bunch of things wrong. So if he just does some things right, he could finish ahead of that, and you can draft him much later. So I'm all over drafting Calvin Ridley again. So I'm ready to get whacked by Calvin Ridley yet again. Now we will move into the F tier, where we got wide receivers 37 through 40. Now, I have more rankings than just this. It doesn't stop at wide receiver 40. If you check out the Patreon, link in the video description, for $7.50, I have my PPR full rankings. The cheat sheet plus the overall rankings, the half PPR rankings, are coming out very shortly if you're in a half PPR league. So Xavier Worthy, rookie, speedster, very fun. Now with the addition of Hollywood Brown, not really the addition, like the detraction, the subtraction of Hollywood Brown, Marquise Hollywood Brown in this offense, feels great for Xavier Worthy. Now, this is a guy that you're picking literally just based upon upside. He's ranked here just based upon weekly upside. He's going to have games where he scores 25 points, 20-plus points, and he's going to have games where he scores like 3 points. But if Hollywood Brown is less a part of the picture, then Xavier Worthy could be more consistent and taking shots on wide receivers on Patrick Mahomes' team around pick 100 where he goes a lot of the time. I'm going to be taking him. At number 38, we got fat Keenan Allen. Dude is built like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I guess Kyler's more built like the Pillsbury Doughboy because he's a miniature man. But Keenan Allen getting a little bit chunky. Now, I'm not here to weight shame. I am not the skinniest guy on earth. And maybe the narrative is overblown. But Keenan Allen's been playing in the NFL since 2013. You want to know where I was in 2013? I was graduating middle school, or maybe I was in high school at that point. I'm not the best at math. I graduated in 2017 from high school, graduated college in 2021. Keenan Allen is one of the best wide receivers that I've seen play my whole entire life. I love Keenan Allen, and I've been talking him up for years. Back-to-back seasons, though, with injuries, and he's getting up into that age point where it's like, okay, he could easily get hurt again. We've seen this all the time with the wide receiver position. They hit a cliff and they start getting hurt more. Now, you can't guarantee injuries. Keenan Allen was looking crispy last season, and maybe he looks crispy like the cream yet again, but I'm a little bit more worried about that. I think Rome Odunze is going to overtake him as the wide receiver 2 in this offense, in the 2 wide receiver sets as the season goes on and on and on and on. Street lights. I really think that Keenan Allen's kind of over the hump. Now, if you really like Keenan Allen, then you should be taking him every single draft. I've talked about this before. If you love Keenan Allen, where he's coming off the board at pick 73, you should be screaming as you walk up to the draft board, fucking giggling like a little girl when you select him. Because if you think he still has what he had last season, where he's the wide receiver 6 in just 13 games, then Keenan is a straight up steal. But based on my perception of him, I don't think he is as much of a steal. Before we close out today's video, though, with wide receivers 39 and 40, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over on Underdog Fantasy. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy and click on the link in the video description, you will receive a bonus cash of up to $1,000 plus a free special pick. The special pick will be something like for week 1, Lamar Jackson higher than half of a yard, which is guaranteed to hit. If you guys are new to Underdog Fantasy and don't know what it is, it's the best place to play best ball fantasy football this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your line for you every single week. They have low buy-in contests, high buy-in contests. Their main contest, $25 to enter, $1.5 million to first place. Best Ball Mania 5. If you guys are new to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code Notorious or click on the video description, the link in the video description or in the pinned comment. So number 39 here, we got Keenan Allen's teammate, Rome Odunze. I think Odunze is one of my favorite late round wide receiver picks because I think he is going to eclipse Keenan Allen as the wide receiver number 2. His tape out of Washington is fan-fucking-tastic, and I think that him and Caleb Williams are going to develop a connection of the wide receiver 2 in this offense. If DJ Moore is to get hurt, knock on wood, we don't refer injuries, then Rome Odunze is going to be a guaranteed top 2 wide receiver either way. He's going to be a guy that's got to develop on your bench, right? You're not sending him out to the Wolves in week number 1, whereas like you could play Keenan Allen in week 1, you could play Xavier. I probably wouldn't play Xavier Worthy in week 1, but like Calvin Ridley, all those guys beforehand, you'd feel pretty confident playing them in week 1. Odunze, not as much the case for me, but he feels like the kind of guy that's chilling on your bench for like half the season, and then he ends up being a straight-up league winner down the stretch. At number 40, we got the Ladd McConkey, another rookie wide receiver. Ladd McConkey of the LA Chargers. Now, we know there's going to be a team that wants to run the ball gently down the stream, and we know they have a great quarterback. Now, when they want to run the ball a ton, that kind of devalues the wide receivers, and the fact that Ladd McConkey is just a rookie and Joshua Palmer has been productive in his career kind of shows me that Joshua Palmer could end up being the wide receiver 1, but I'm going to take the shot on a guy who has played very well at Georgia, has crazy target upside if the target funnel goes his way. If it ends up being a little bit more even Stevens, then both Ladd or Joshua Palmer probably end up not being the best picks, but as a pick like 95, 100 range type of guy, the upside of Ladd McConkey is incredible because Justin Herbert is Justin Herbert, who's a very good NFL quarterback. So if Ladd McConkey is getting locked into, then he's going to really be able to destroy my ranking of wide receiver number 40. Some other guys in this tier that we're not going to discuss in today's video because they're not part of the rankings. They are part of the rankings, but not part of the top 40, would be Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jaguars, Keon Coleman, who is on the Buffalo Bills, JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Oh my God, I forgot how to say his name. Today Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Christian Watson, wide receiver 44. Then we get into the Hopkins, Addison, Sutton, Jameson Williams type of range. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below if you ended up enjoying. Whether you enjoyed the video and are new, or you're not new, hit that like button down below. It would help me out a ton. Follow me on Twitter or X at NotoriousFantasy and check out the rankings link in the video description. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. As always, good boy.